The rain had turned into a light drizzle when I parked in the cracked entrance. Emma slept in the back seat, hugging her bunny tightly with the plastic hospital bracelet still on her little wrist. Her breathing was calmer now, more stable, but every whistle still made me clutch my chest. We had spent 5 hours in the emergency room. I hadn't eaten, my legs hurt, but she was okay. That was enough. I parked next to the old Camry, which didn't move unless someone needed to go get food. My house, at least on paper, was there, motionless and gray under the gloom of the afternoon. The porch light flickered uselessly, although it wasn't dark enough for it to matter. I sighed and stretched to unbuckle Emma's belt. She stirred, murmured something I couldn't understand, and hugged her bunny tighter. "We're here, little one," I whispered. "Let's go inside." She nodded, still sleepy, and followed me up the stairs, her little hand in mine. I opened the door to the rear unit, where they let me live as long as I did my part. The smell of humidity clung to the walls, always worse after the rain. Before I could close the door, I heard her. "It's about time," Jessica snapped from the main kitchen, which we technically shared. She stood with her arms crossed, the shine of her lips too perfect for someone who didn't work. "The rent is due today, you know. No excuses." I didn't respond. I crouched down to unbutton Emma's coat. She looked at me, always watching. I stood up slowly. "I just came home from the hospital with your daughter," I said, "and I'm not paying rent." Jessica's laughter was sharp. "You live here." "No." Before I could speak, Michael came in from the hallway. He looked at me once, then looked away as if I weren't real. "Do you think you can stay here for free?" he said. "It's my house," I replied. "My name is on the deed." His hand moved faster than my eyes could follow. A sharp blow to the face. I stumbled backward, my shoulder hitting the wall. The metallic taste filled my mouth before I understood what had happened. Blood. Emma shouted. When I looked up, he smiled with disdain. At that moment, I finally understood something I had denied myself for years. Michael said nothing after the blow, just turned and walked down the hall as if he hadn't just hit his mother in front of her daughter. Jessica stood there, impassive, rolling a lock of hair on her finger. Emma kept screaming, her voice broken by fear. I leaned against the wall so I wouldn't fall. I had seen it coming, not the slap itself, maybe, but something like it. And I had allowed it, little by little. It started 3 years ago when Michael lost his job. "Only for a few months," Mom said on the phone, her voice too soft, "until he gets back on his feet." He and Jessica arrived 2 days later with boxes, settling into the main house as if it were their own. She didn't ask permission, decorated, took the main room, hung curtains. They said it made sense for me to move to the rear unit. It had fewer stairs, and I was older. Jessica said it with a smile, as if she were doing me a favor. I packed the room where I had slept next to my late husband for 20 years and moved into the unit behind the garage. Back then, Emma could barely walk. Jessica didn't want to deal with naps or tantrums, and Michael was too busy looking for work from the couch. So I took care of her, fed her, changed her. She clung to me before even looking for them. When her asthma started, it was me who stayed awake all night with a humidifier and cold compresses. I didn't mind. She was my granddaughter. I would have done anything. Rent was never mentioned at first. I paid the taxes, the utilities, the repairs. Jessica said they were between jobs, but I should be patient. I cooked extra food. I took Emma to medical appointments. When the electricity bill doubled, I paid it. Then, last spring, Michael slipped a note under my door, a rent bill for 12,000 pesos on my own property. I laughed, thinking it was a joke, but Jessica came the next day with her arms crossed, asking if I was going to be late. I paid, not because I believed I should, but because Emma kept having crises and I needed to be close in case it happened again. I said it was temporary, that when she stabilized, things would go back to how they were before. But now, with the burnings still blooming on my face, I saw that none of this had been temporary, and nothing about them remained the same. That night, I entered Emma's room and found the drawing that made something inside me break. Emma was silent after the slap, too quiet. She didn't cry much, just clung to her bunny and curled up at the end of the sofa with her knees pressed to her chest, as if she wanted to disappear. I brought her a warm towel and a glass of water, but she didn't meet my eyes. Her small shoulders trembled once, then stopped. I didn't pressure her. I sat across the room with an ice pack on my face, the cold biting the swelling that was already beginning to form. Every breath hurt my jaw. My left cheek throbbed in waves. She fell asleep shortly after, her bunny still under her chin, her fingers tangled in its ear. I carried her carefully to her bed, smoothing her curls before covering her with the sheet. As I turned to leave, I saw the paper on the floor. It was a drawing, crayons on folded printer paper. A stick figure of me lay on the ground with a red stain next to my face. The bunny was drawn with careful gray lines beside me. Another figure, Emma, I assumed, was in a corner with tears drawn in blue, large stripes falling from huge eyes. Jessica and Michael were there too, with serious faces, arms crossed high above us. She even drew the sofa, the rug, the corner of the center table I hit. I sat on the edge of her bed, holding the drawing in my lap, as if it might break if I moved too fast. I didn't hear her stir until her voice came, soft and scared. "They're going to hurt you again." I looked at her. Her eyes were wide open in the darkness, her bunny still pressed to her chest. "No, little one," I whispered. "Not again." She didn't answer, just turned her face to the wall. In my bathroom, I removed the concealer I had put on the bruise from yesterday, one they hadn't even noticed. The new one was worse, darker, spreading like rot under my skin. I looked at myself in the mirror, the edges of Emma's drawing still wrinkled in my hand. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel fear. I felt something else, firmer, heavier. It was the beginning of something I had buried for too long. Then the phone vibrated, illuminating the kitchen in the darkness. The phone lit up with a message from Sarah, the neighbor across the street. I hadn't spoken to her in weeks, not really. We waved through the blinds, sometimes chatted by the mailboxes. But this message had no greeting, just a question. "Are you okay?" Below was a video file. My hands grew cold before I touched the screen. I waited. I looked at it. I considered not opening it, but something in me knew what was there. I knew before touching it and seeing myself on the screen. It was recorded from her window, perfectly focused on ours. No sound at first, just movement. Michael's figure crossing the hall, Jessica behind with her mouth already twisted in that cruel smile. Then me, standing next to the sofa, Emma clinging to her bunny at the edge of the frame. The slap came faster on the screen than in my memory. My body shook back, I fell, hit the table, then the floor. Emma's scream came later, sharp, cutting, breaking everything like glass. The video ended with me on the floor, Emma crying, her bunny falling from her arms. I watched it twice. 3 times. On the 4th, I paused just before the slap. I studied my own face, the disbelief, the helplessness, the way my body shrank, not just from the pain, but from something deeper, a kind of recognition, as if even in that moment I had already accepted it. Another message came, "You don't deserve this. You need help." I pressed the phone against my chest and let the silence envelop me. In the background, the refrigerator hummed. A dog barked in the distance. Emma stirred in her sleep. No one had told me that before, not in so many words, not without a but afterward, not without reminding me that it was family and that family meant swallowing the pain with gratitude. I walked to the kitchen window, pulled back the curtain, and looked across the street. Sarah's porch light was still on. I couldn't see her through the glass, but I felt her presence, silent, vigilant, solid. I opened the drawer next to the sink and took out the folder where I kept the house deed. My name was still there, not Michael's, not Jessica's, mine. I suddenly remembered every check I had written for them, every excuse I'd invented, every time I told myself it was easier to stay quiet. But that night, I didn't feel quiet. I felt awake. The next morning, I drove straight to the public registry office. The woman behind the counter barely raised her eyes from the register when I handed her my ID and property information. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, navigating decades of records as if they were nothing. But for me, it was a reckoning. She turned the screen toward me. "This is your name, correct?" I nodded. There it was, clear as water, Mary Thompson, sole proprietor, no liens, no encumbrances, no transfers. I had never signed anything to Michael, nor had I even considered it. But at some point, I had let them live as if the house were theirs. They filled it with their furniture, their rules, their contempt. "Did they ever pay rent?" the employee asked. "Not officially," I said. "They've lived in the main house for almost 3 years." She arched an eyebrow, but said nothing more. She just gave me a printed copy of the deed and told me to keep it in a safe place. I kept it in my bag until I reached Mr. Palacios' office. He was the kind of lawyer who didn't speak more than necessary. He wore short sleeves in winter and had a box of tissues on his desk that no one touched. He was liked for his lack of compassion. I didn't need kindness. I needed facts. I told him everything. The slap, the false rent claims, the video, the drawing, Emma's silent question. I saw his expression change just a little, tensing at the jaw. "They're not tenants," he said. "They're guests who have crossed the line. You have the right to notify them, 30 days minimum. You could request a restraining order for physical assault, especially with video evidence and a minor as a witness." I swallowed. "And if they refuse to leave?" "No question," he said. "We file a formal eviction. The sheriff's office will enforce it. You'll have to stand firm." I looked at the folder in my lap, heavier than it should have been, not for the paper, but for the years of forgetting what was mine, what I had built, what I had protected, even when I let it be taken. I left his office with a plan, not just an idea, a schedule. When I opened the door of my duplex that night and saw Jessica's bag lying on the floor as if she lived there without question, I knew exactly when I would change that. It was at the foot of the porch stairs. The papers in my hands were shaking slightly, but my grip was firm. The sheriff at my side said nothing. His presence was enough. I wasn't there to argue or explain, just to ensure I didn't do it alone. Michael was already on the porch, arms crossed, barefoot, hair still damp from the shower. Jessica was sitting in a plastic chair, sliding her finger on her phone as if nothing on the screen mattered. When she looked up and saw the sheriff, her whole body tensed. "What's this?" she asked, her voice already full of suspicion. I took a step forward. My knees were stiff, but my voice came out firm. "I'm notifying you." I handed the envelope. Jessica didn't take it, so I left it on the small table beside her, next to her half-drunk iced coffee. She looked at it as if it were poison. Michael took a step toward me. "What the hell is this, Mom?" he said. "You have 30 days. Then you leave." He sneered. "From my house?" "It's not your house," I said. "It never was." He let out a laugh, but it sounded empty. "You think a little piece of paper gives you power now? You think this matters to us?" "It matters to me," I said. Jessica stood, scraping the chair against the porch boards. "You're unbelievable," she blurted out. "We gave you a place to live, and this is how you repay us? You've been living in my house without paying rent while demanding I pay you. You've turned my granddaughter's home into a place where she's afraid to sleep." "Oh, now you're the victim," Michael snapped, stepping closer. His voice lowered. "You think anyone's going to believe your version?" "You don't have to convince anyone," the sheriff interrupted, his voice firm. "This is a legal eviction. Your names aren't on the deed. If you don't leave by the specified date, we'll return." Michael looked past me to the entrance. Emma was there, holding her bunny in one hand, the other in mine. She looked so small among us, but her voice came out clear and strong. "Don't hurt her again." Michael froze. Jessica's face turned red. I looked at Emma and squeezed her hand gently. My hands were trembling, but my voice didn't waver. You have 30 days. After that, this ends." Jessica pushed the envelope on the table. "You're a traitor," she hissed. "You turned your back on your own blood." I looked her straight in the eyes. "No," I said. "I finally remembered who I am." As we walked away, Emma stood a little taller by my side. She didn't look back, and neither did I. We had 30 days ahead of us, but I knew peace had already begun to grow in the space they used to occupy. The house wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, rough walls, floors that creaked more than any complaint I let slip. But it was ours. There were no eyes watching from the hallway, no slamming doors or screams filtering through the walls. Only space, just air. Emma chose the smaller bedroom without complaint. She put her bunny on the pillow and hung her drawings on the wall with tape, taking care not to wrinkle the corners. The first thing she hung was new, a house with a red roof and yellow windows, 2 stick figures holding hands under a bright orange sun. One had gray hair, the other held a bunny. I looked at it longer than I intended. Nobody was screaming in that drawing. No one was on the ground. The second morning there, I woke up in silence. No footsteps above. No bass rumbling through shared walls, only birds and the low hum of the refrigerator. It took me a minute to recognize the sensation. I hadn't clenched my jaw while sleeping. My shoulders didn't ache from built-up tension. I had slept soundly, without fear. I made pancakes that morning, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Emma ate too and ran to the living room to color more. Her humming returned, soft at first, then louder. It filled the space like something sacred. I began therapy the following week. In the first session, I cried for 10 minutes without saying a word. In the second, I spoke for an hour and didn't remember half of it. By the third, I admitted that I thought being needed was the only way to be loved. It had become the only thing I knew how to do. The therapist didn't rush me. She just nodded and asked, and now I was learning to rest, to say no, to sit in stillness without guilt creeping up my spine. Emma adapted faster than I did. Children are so resilient when you finally give them air to breathe. Her drawings grew brighter, her questions lighter, her laughter more frequent. The day we passed the 30-day mark, she gave me a new drawing. This time, the house had a garden. The figures were the same, but there was something new, a sign next to the door. It said, "Home." That night, as I tucked her in and kissed her forehead, my phone lit up with a message that broke the calm. The message was from my cousin, Laura. We hadn't spoken in over a year. Her words flickered on the screen. I heard what happened. "Jessica says you lost your mind, that you threw your own son out. Is that true?" I didn't respond immediately. I sat with it, let it hurt, let it settle, let it pass. By noon, 3 more messages arrived. One from my niece in Querétaro, "I just want to know how you are. If you need anything." Another from a church friend I hadn't spoken to in years. And one from an aunt I barely remembered. Family is complicated. You did what you had to do. The stories moved fast, faster than I expected. Jessica had always been good with narratives. I imagined the version she was telling, a fragile, unhinged mother throwing her son and his wife to the street without notice. The parts she omitted were the ones that mattered most. So I made a folder. I named it Safety for Emma. Inside, I saved Sarah's video, screenshots of Jessica's messages demanding money and calling me selfish, the photo of the bruise, the county records showing my sole ownership, and a voice note I recorded one night after the slap when the silence became too heavy. I didn't post it on social media or send it to all the relatives. I just kept it organized, ready. If anyone wanted the truth, they'd have to ask me directly. And if they didn't, that was fine too. I was tired of defending myself against people who only called when the drama was interesting enough. Later, I learned that Michael and Jessica were staying in a friend's converted garage, someone who didn't ask questions. Someone said Jessica complained about the cold smell, that Michael still blamed me for ruining everything, but I didn't need to know more. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted space. And now I had it. Some nights, I still woke up with my jaw clenched, as if the past were pulling me from the sheets. But then I heard Emma's slow, steady breathing from the other bedroom, and it let me settle again. Therapy helped. Time helped more. Emma's teacher sent a note saying she seemed lighter, more focused in class. She's drawing more, she wrote. Happier things. Tonight, I stood at the door of her bedroom. She was asleep, her cheek pressed to the pillow, one arm around her bunny. The gentle rise and fall of her chest followed the rhythm of the life we had created, silent, earned, real. I used to think I was a burden, that if I didn't give, they'd discard me. But standing there, watching her sleep in peace, I felt something I hadn't dared to name until now. I'm not a burden. I was the gift they wasted.